Right guys, welcome to Friday Waffle on a Friday. A particularly damp and wet and quite frankly disgusting Friday. Now I was out taking the dogs out for a walk there, and I've got to say it really feels like it's like the first day. I wouldn't say it's the first day of winter, but it's the first day this year where I feel like summer's finished. And and one thing was last week. No, not last week. This week actually has been really nice weather-wise. We've had 3 or 4 days excellent weather. I was actually supposed to be going camping. Me and a couple of mates. We usually have an annual Jolly Boys outing, and we go camping. We're supposed to be going camping tomorrow, and it's to be torrential rain and I was going to say torrential winds. What do you call it? High gale force winds. And it's just disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Now if I look like shit, if I look like I've got big bags under my eyes and I look really tired, it's because I've got big bags under my eyes and I'm really tired, and I blame the Olympics. Now the funny thing is, I've seen quite a few, shall we say, conflicting posts on Facebook about the Olympics. I personally love the Olympics. I love the whole competitiveness. I love watching people achieve their goals. I love the highs, the lows, the variety of sports. Now that light is flickering all the time, so it might actually plunge me into darkness. So I'll just keep talking. I'll not put a bother putting a light on. I don't think it'll make any difference if you can't actually see me. I love the Olympics. I really do. I think it stems from being a young kid. My dad was always into sports, and I've got really fond memories of sitting with my dad in front of the TV watching the Olympics. I can even, believe it or not, I can even remember watching, was it the Montreal Olympics in 1972. I mean, I would only be 5 years old at the time, 4 or 5, but I can still actually remember, watching them. It might have not been the Montreal Olympics I watched with them, it might have been later on, I don't know, but I can certainly remember sitting with my dad just watching the running and all these, brilliant. So I think that's why I've got such a, I love the Olympics to bits. I do understand that if you're not into sport, and there are a lot of people who are not into sport, I do understand how it could be a bit OTT, because I'm not a football fan, and I mean, saying that, I'm not a football fan, but I like watching like the World Cup and things like that. Although I generally like to have like a team that I'm going to support to can enjoy it properly, but even I get a bit fed up with the football when it's on non-stop. But it'll be the same with the Olympics, or some people just don't like it, but I love it to bits. Anyway, that wasn't anything I was going to talk about. So camping, we're supposed to be going camping. I didn't because of the weather, and I'm talking about how old I'm looking. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of the Olympics, and as you probably know, if you're from the UK and you watch Olympics, you will probably know that most of the sort of the sort of sports are on in the evening in Rio, which is about 2-3 o'clock in the morning UK time. So this last couple of weeks, I mean, it wasn't so bad because I was off on holiday for a couple of weeks there, but I went back to work on Monday, and what I've been doing is I've been setting an alarm. When I know like Usain Bolt's going to be running, I've been setting an alarm for like 2:15 in the morning, waking up, watching the race. It might only be for a few minutes on my phone, and then trying to get back to sleep again. But the problem is, once you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, it usually takes a while to get back to sleep. So I've been waking up absolutely shattered, seriously shattered. So tired that my eyes are like nipping with pain because I'm so tired. And I noticed, I said that to my wife tonight. I was out taking the dogs a walk. They're actually both in here just now. I feel like knackered, and I think it's probably all the staying up to watch the Olympics is catching up on me. So thank goodness it's finishing very soon. I think it finishes in 3 or 4 days time. Although I will be up nice and early this morning or tomorrow morning to watch Mo Farah hopefully secure his 5k Olympic medal. I'm meant to be going out running tomorrow. I've got my park run, my weekly park run, that's 5k as well, so I'll see. So yeah, I'm pretty knackered. Work has been bloody pandemonium. It really has. Going back after 2 weeks, there's been a massive amount of work to do, and I've been roped into doing some other stuff. So I've really not been doing my own work at the moment. I was in a meeting yesterday, which went on and on and on and on. It just dragged on and on. I also gave blood on Monday, which I always like. Now the funny thing is, I absolutely detest when I can't give blood. I hate missing it. And when I got there, they said, when did you last give blood? And I thought, oh, 6 months ago. And then they checked on the computer, but no, it was actually a year ago. And I looked at the form that I had, it was a year ago. And I couldn't believe that. I cannot believe that that was a year ago. That is just absolutely insane. Realise, where did the time go? It's very true. The older you get, the quicker time goes in. So, aye, anyway, all said and done, I've got one little thing I want to talk about. And this came about through down the rabbit hole. My good friend Kev, he made a video. He was across in the UK. Kev comes from Canada. He was across in the UK for about a month last month, and he visited Blackpool. Now Kev and I did meet up when he was across in the UK. He came up to Glasgow with his lovely wife, and we made a short. We went out for a meal and a couple of drinks, and made a short video, and we're talking about arcades. Now Kev made a video of Blackpool. Now I've called this, I've just written down the death of the arcade. The arcade, to anybody that wasn't around, in the mid-80s, it was one of these magical places. Now, you need to try and understand that video games were completely new, 1978, 1979. Before that, we didn't know what video games were, we'd never heard of them. And then about the sort of late 70s, Pong, the Pong machines came out. I don't think there was that many Pong machines like in arcades, the arcade didn't exist when Pong came out. That was the first video game, so there wasn't such a thing as arcades. But I don't remember playing Pong. I remember seeing it once in Edinburgh Airport, but it's really after Space Invaders came out, and then in the early 80s there was stuff like Scramble, there was all the classics, Phoenix, Asteroid, Battlezone, all the real classics started to come out. And so of course the companies, these things are, as I've mentioned before, these things, they're not really designed to be particularly enjoyable, they're designed to make money. So very quickly people realise, wait a minute, we can start putting these into a place for people to come to. Before all these machines came about, I think you always had what was termed an arcade. I don't know what arcade actually means. I don't know what the official title of an arcade is, but I think you always had these arcades in in Blackpool, Scarborough, all that. It was always the seaside places. Basically, it was places that people used to go on their holidays before people could afford to go to Spain, and you go on these sort of package holidays. People used to stay in the UK. We would go to the seaside resorts, and they always had these places which they were called arcades, where they would have different things. I don't know what an arcade looked like before the video games came along, but late 70s, early 80s, all these arcades popped up, and I never got to visit arcades where I stayed because I lived in Scotland, and I lived in central Scotland, and there just wasn't really arcades in Scotland. I think you had a few. Hang on a second, I'm just going to this camera, believe it or not, I've actually got the camera sellotaped to, right, anyway, there we go. Aye, sorry about that. Where I lived there was no arcades at all, so the only time I got to experience arcades was when we went on holiday. My mum and dad, they were from a sort of different generation. My mum and dad, my mum and dad, if they were still alive now, they would be in their 80s, so I was kind of quite a late child at the time, so my mum and dad had no interest in arcades at all. So it was always a bit of a fight to try and get them to take me to Blackpool and what have you. On odd occasion we would go down and they would give me maybe a couple of pounds to go and spend, but later on, sort of sort of the kind of the early 80s, mid 80s. There used to be a thing called a youth centre, a youth club, sorry, and it was something basically when school wasn't on, kids could congregate, could go along to this club, and they could play table tennis, they could play darts, they could, I don't know, whatever they do, they could just, whatever. And there used to be this arcade club. There used to be this youth club, and once a year they used to organise a trip to Blackpool. You got on the bus about 4 o'clock in the morning, and it would drive down to Blackpool. You'd spend the whole day, and then you'd come back up. So me and my mate, we used to go down there every year. And how would I describe, if you've never really seen an arcade before, there's probably people watching this that really, you were born after the arcade boom. Arcades, they were just this cacophony of noise. There was bright lights, there was booming noises. I mean, I think what they did was they would literally turn every single pinball, every single arcade video game up to full, and so you just got this cacophony of noise, all these different machines basically fighting for attention. That's about the best way I can describe it. There was always certain games that seemed to kind of be heard above the rest of them. Galaxian was always one of them. With the noise of the sort of the bullets getting fired, the sort of wee intro part. Space Invaders with the constant thump as invaders sort of wound their way down the screen. Then you got the high pitched kind of shooting sound. Asteroids had a really, really deep bass. The one for me that probably dominated anything was Defender. When you get the title screen to Defender, you get this real, how would I describe it? It's just a loud electronic noise, this pulsating noise, and then you got the sound of the firing. So yeah, you went into these arcades. They were generally quite dark and dingy. Now they're probably dingy because the people that frequented them were probably guys in their sort of teens, maybe late teens. They probably smoked, they probably drank. So arcades back then, they were almost quite kind of dangerous places. You never, the thing is, you never felt intimidated, although they were like, you felt they were kind of dangerous. You never felt scared going into them, because at the end of the day there was lots of people in them, and there was always people, there was the guys that actually owned the place. But you went into these things and you were just met with this almighty noise of machines, and then you got all the because the arcades themselves were quite dark, your eyes were smarting just with the bright lights, all the pulsing vectors and phosphorus lights getting lit off, the different colours. It was just like a rainbow of colours and cacophony of noise. That's about the best way I can describe it. But back in the mid 80s, you went in and there was just every single machine you could ever imagine. There literally was. I'm not even going to attempt to start naming them. I've already named a few of them. But and what you would do is you would walk about and you would just look at people playing them. One of the big parts of the arcade for many people was just the watching other people getting good scores. I mean, there was guys who became really good at certain games, and they became kind of almost like legends of the time in the arcade. And of course you could put your name in the high score, and so it was always the same guys. You'd see their name up in the high score. I mean, I have a mate Sick Boy, that's his kind of internet type name. He is without a doubt the best video game player I've ever seen in my life. There are no games that this guy cannot play. I was down at the arcade club down near Bury, or I think it's moved actually. Is it Manchester? I'm not sure. And I was down there last year, and my mate Sick Boy, even now, I mean, Andy must be Andy's about the same age as me. Andy must be 46, 47 years old. He is just incredible. Every single video game he can absolutely nail. In fact, I'll tell you a little funny story. Andy used to be a journalist for magazines. I mean, he's written a few books now, but he used to work on the Games Master magazine. He worked on Super Play, which was the Super Nintendo magazine. He got invited along to was it a PlayStation? I think it was the official PlayStation magazine. They invited him along to some. Andy was working on Total Film at the time. He was an editor for Total Film, and then PlayStation magazine invited Andy along. And one of the games they were showing off was Virtua Tennis for the PlayStation 2, and all the PlayStation 2 sort of crew were playing this game, and they thought they were great at it. And they challenged Andy, and apparently Andy beat every single one of them. Andy had never played the game in his life, and he absolutely hammered every single one of these guys. These were guys that were playing this game non-stop. They all thought they were really good video game players, and Andy single-handedly beat every single one. I don't think they got a single point off him. He was telling me that story, but I've seen Andy play. There was no game, even I can kind of understand why. Well, he's good at, fast-paced, twitchy games like maybe, I don't know, Star Wars, Defender, Robotron. I mean, you ought to see him play Robotron. He'll knock out like 1.5 million points, without breaking a sweat. But even stuff like FIFA, I've played him at FIFA online, and he just hammers you, absolutely hammers you. He'll own anybody at Street Fighter 2. It's just incredible. And it's actually great to watch somebody like him playing it. I always remember when I met him last year, I was asking him, I said, why are you so good? I says, it can't possibly be because you're just practice games, because a lot of people tend to be quite good at maybe 1 or 2 games because you've played it a lot. But he can master any game without playing it, He can master any game without having previous practice. And what he said to me was, he's actually, as he was talking to me, we were sitting in a pub, I think it was, we were sitting talking, and as he was talking to me, he says, right now, as I'm talking to you, I can hear 2 guys over there talking about such and such. There's a girl here talking to somebody on the phone. I can hear a guy talking about the football behind me. He says he's got this spatial awareness, a talent. This is something that he's got. He's when he's in an environment, he can pick up on lots of things going on around him, and he says that when he brings that to a video game, although he's concentrating what he's doing, he's able to look at the thing in a sort of wider picture, and so he's able to sort of interpret and see what's actually happening. And he says he thinks that basically what makes him good at video games. So there you go. But getting back to the arcades, these are places where, guys that were good at games became kind of legends. They became sort of heroes in the arcade. But it was just fantastic. You'd walk into an arcade, there was all these machines. Can you imagine all these classic games there for you to play? Just an awesome environment, brilliant. And sadly, with home consoles obviously becoming more popular now, we've got home consoles they're putting out graphics which arcade games can't simply match. So really, the birth of the video game industry ultimately became the death of the arcade. Companies, they probably weren't making any money. Why would they want to have these arcades when people weren't frequenting them? At the end of the day, it's like I remember, I'm old enough to remember the 80s, the cinema, believe it or not, in the 80s, the cinema kind of died a death. It really did, and I think that was because of videotapes. You could go and hire films, so people simply stopped going to the cinema. And then it would probably be maybe in the last 10 years with CGI and bigger budgets that the cinemas have become popular again. But I'll tell you, the price it costs to go to the cinema for me and my daughter, I don't get any change out of 30 quid, and that is for me and my daughter and maybe getting a couple of drinks, 30 quid. It's no wonder these places are half empty. But slight annoyance, I was changing the subject a wee bit. We were going to go and see The Shallows, which is a film all about the great white shark. It's a great white shark, apparently. This girl gets stranded on a rock and she can't get off the rock because there's this great white shark. So I said to her last night, look, let's go up and we'll go and see this film. So I went online, had a quick look, I put in the cinema name of the film, and it was parental guidance, 13 years old. So my daughter's 12, so I thought that's fine. Got up there, and when we got there, my daughter says, Dad, it's a 15. And I'm like, no, it's not. And sure enough, it said 15 in the poster. So I went up to the guy, I says, look mate, I says, is this a 15? He says, yeah. I'm like, I don't believe it. I says, I've spent all this money on sweets and things. I says, your website says it's a 12, not a 12, a parental guidance. I says, is it possible we can get in? I says, it's only a film about a shark. I say, you know, it's not some violent film. And he says, look, it could cost me my job. So I thought, right, okay, it's not his fault. But aye, it just got me thinking about, you know, nowadays with the internet, kids are far more aware of things going on in the world. I mean, you know, they can even bloody watch ISIS videos of guys getting their heads taken off if they wanted. You know, it wouldn't be particularly difficult to kind of look at that. But it just got me thinking about, are ratings on films still viable? I mean, I would not let my daughter watch a film if it had sex or had, you know, violence in it. But a film about a shark, a white shark, yeah, there might be a bit of blood and gore. As a parent, I know that she's absolutely fine with that, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. So yeah, that was just a bit of a rant. But anyway, the arcades. So yeah, with the advent of the video games, you know, becoming better and better. I mean, the first first home video games were stuff like the Atari 2600. They could not compete. Even the 8-bit machines, the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, Atari, Amstrad, they couldn't compete with arcade games. But then when the 16-bit came along, you know, 16-bit computers, Atari ST, Amiga, and probably more like the SNES and Mega Drive. The SNES and Mega Drive were able to replicate, you know, scrolling beat 'em ups, platform games. I mean, the SNES, one of the biggest games in arcades was Street Fighter 2, yet the SNES brought out an almost arcade perfect version of that. So because of that, the arcades eventually became more and more less popular, and to the point now, rather depressingly, when you go into an arcade, in fact, what I'll do is I'll put a wee link. I'll put a wee link to Kevin's video if you can watch that. That is that is what the arcade has become now. From the outside, it looks really nice. It draws you in. It's got all this sort of sound, the loud sound, the music, the flashing lights. But when you actually get into these arcades now, they are so depressing. They really, really are. I watched Kevin's video and I really did feel depressed. All you get are these machines where you put in 2 pence or 10 pence and it pushes the money and you win more money, or these grabbing machines which aren't even skill. They're gambling machines. You know, you've got as much chance of winning one of these grabber machines as you have of winning the jackpot on a fruit machine. You know, I just get really, really depressed when I go into an arcade now. Will it ever change? Will we ever see a comeback of the arcade? Probably not. Now, if you want to play classic games, then fortunately there are, I'm going to say a few, there probably are a few places throughout the UK. Certainly there's a place called Arcade Club. It's owned by a guy, Andy, I can't remember what his second name is, but I was down there last year. It's phenomenal. They have got the biggest collection of arcade games I have ever seen. It's exactly like a classic 80s arcade. It costs £10 to get in, and everything's on free play. Obviously, the other way to play these games now is to go along to some of the big retro fairs. You Play Blackpool, Play Manchester, Revival. Is it Nerg, which is down in Newcastle? That's about the only way you can really play arcade games now. But would the arcade ever make a comeback? It's interesting. I think the problem we've got is all these classic arcade games, they're really rare now. They're hard to maintain. If you get an arcade game now, you've got to be able to repair it yourself. Parts are becoming harder to find. So the actual original arcade games now are difficult to get a hold of. If you do have an arcade, you'd have to be able to repair them yourself, and not everybody's got that kind of skill. I've always wondered about the viability of having, I mean, my little, I've made myself a, I didn't make that one, my mate made my Mame cab. I've built myself a little, you know, the little arcade cab thing. I've always wondered about the viability of somebody building maybe 100 proper sized arcade cabinets, putting monitors in and putting a PC in and just getting MAME to run all the classic games. I think the problem you'd have would be the licensing. You know, it would be very, very difficult to actually get, you know, the license for that. But I think if you could go into an arcade and you had access to all these games, I think it might be popular. It would definitely be popular with arcade gamers. Would it be popular with the general populace? Probably not. I mean, let's be honest, and I hate to say this, but your average video gamer, the average person that plays video games now, is not remotely interested in playing games from the 80s. You know, that is the truth of the matter. So, right, okay, that is the only thing I've got to talk about. I think I've probably been rabbiting on enough anyway. Right, I've got a couple of questions from my usual suspects, Mr. Down the Rabbit Hole Kev. For the Friday, hi Alan, sorry, Friday Waffle, hi Alan. Are you interested in No Man's Sky? I know you like Delete. What is your opinion of procedurally generated games? Now I don't know if you've watched my Waffle, Kev. I was talking about No Man's Sky quite a bit last Friday. I'm not going to go into it because I've already discussed it, but I'm not interested in playing it because it's just simply too big a game for my liking. I'm not prepared to put 100 hours into any one game. And you're saying here, when you say procedurally generated game, is it one of these, I'm assuming it's one of these games where it's almost like randomly generated. Excuse me. I'm absolutely, I tip my hat to the cleverness of people that are able to do things like that. I mean, I'm guessing obviously they're saying there's something like 18 trillion levels, and they've obviously not sat and generated 18 trillion levels. It must be randomly generated. It's very, very clever, but I always find that games that have that sort of intelligence or functionality, excuse me a second, right, in, hurry up, right, come on, that's, I'm back in again. Games that have that sort of random generator level type thing, you tend to find that they're all very much the same, and ultimately, in my mind, quite boring games. So I'm not a big fan of them, Kev. I think if there was some kind of puzzle game where it generated infinite levels, then that would be great. But games maybe like No Man's Sky, whatever, I don't know. Some of them, it depends how clever it is. I mean, you know, you could play maybe some kind of game like Berserk, see where it generates random mazes, and you know, they would all be very, very similar. It depends how much what it actually generates. Does it put new baddies? If it made up different enemies, then that would be quite special. But I think the problem with that is you do generally get the levels all become very, very much the same because they're just using the same. They're using the same sort of items, but just kind of generating them randomly, so I suppose you're going to get a lot of similarity. So yeah, as I said, I did talk about No Man's Sky quite a bit last week, Kevin. I'm not really interested in it. When it comes down to £10, I'll no doubt buy it on Steam just to see what all the fuss is about. So anyway, yep, that is that one. Now, Rogue was a classic and many people have a high opinion of that game also. Rogue, I've heard of that. Was that on the Spectrum? You know what, Kev, I can't actually, if I'm not mistaken, is it some kind of strategy game, Rogue? Not too sure, but I'm guessing it's one of these games again. It's got random levels, but I'm not too sure. I've never played Rogue myself. So yeah. Second part is also I was listening to Simon Butler of Ocean in a podcast, and he said, in his opinion, people who play retro games are like people who play one crossword puzzle, then erase the answers, then play that same crossword puzzle again. What's your take on his opinion? I'm sorry, but I think he's talking absolute bollocks. I really do. It depends what you're talking about. I mean, I would say that probably more now, a current gen game, primarily, I would say they're kind of limited in what you can do. You know, there's one or two games like maybe Grand Theft Auto 5, whatever, but they do give you a lot of choice and scope as to what you can do. But most games nowadays, all these like third person shooter stuff like, dare I say, Left 4 Dead and Doom and all these games, they're all pretty much on rail shooters. That's all they are. They've got different window decorations, different graphics, different sounds, but ultimately you're controlling this one thing with the joypads and you're just following a pattern, you're shooting things, you get to the end. So, and you know, so if you completed that game, went back and played it again, you're playing the same game twice. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some games, I don't know, I'm going to say like Manic Miner. Yeah, Manic Miner has got, is it 24 levels? You know, if you keep playing it over and over again, you're playing the same puzzle game over and over again. But the thing is about a crossword puzzle, once you know the answer, then you're automatically putting the answer in. You play Manic Miner, unless you play it non-stop, it provides a challenge, and that is the that's the part I like about, you know, these games. They're bloody tough, and you've got to learn how to play. You've got to learn the controls, master the controls, figure out how to complete a certain level. So even games like Manic Miner, yeah, unless you're really shit hot, when you go back and play it, it's still a challenge. So I'm afraid Mr. Butler's talking shite. Unless you complete a crossword puzzle, you rub out the answers out there, you can't remember what the answers were. But the way he's talking is, you know what the answer is. You know what 1A is. I don't know, whatever it is. So to compare a video game with a crossword puzzle that you're doing over and over again is absolute nonsense. How can you say that Defender or Robotron or Space Invaders is like doing the same crossword puzzle over and over again? Yeah, you know what the aim of the game is. It's the same baddies, but the challenge is different every single time. If the challenge was the same, I would get the same score every time. I don't. Even the best players in the world, you know, they'll have one good game, 4 or 5 bad games. So I'm afraid to say, I think Mr. Butler is talking shite. Bit strange coming from a guy like him, considering he made his money, you know, making these kind of games. I'm not sure if he's actually, I don't think he's been detrimental saying that. That's his opinion, he's entitled to that, but I'm afraid to say, as somebody who plays a lot of old games, it's certainly not the same. Yeah, I've got 1 or 2 games, things like Bruce Lee, games that I have completed quite a few times. I will go back and play them because I enjoy them. The experience and the journey to get to the end is still good fun. So, what's your take on his opinion? Well, I've just said that. By the way, he's an interesting speaker. You should see if you can do a Blimey It's Only with Simon. I don't really. I've heard of the guy. I don't know too much about him, to be honest with you, Kev. The Blimey It's Only. It's. I mean, it's not. It's certainly not died a death. It's kind of gone very, very quiet. I've not been putting really much an effort into trying to get people on, because when you do, it's been quite stressful. It does put quite a lot on me to try and get the video pulled together and that. But there are a few people I want to do, and I'm still. I'm hopefully going to get my big mate, Mr. Tony Temple, Missile Command Extraordinaire. I'm hopefully going to be speaking to him in the next couple of weeks. And there's a few other guys that I'd like to get. I'd love to get Stuart Campbell, you know, fellow Scotsman. I would love to get Jeff Minter. Jeff Minter would be awesome to have. Gary Penn again. But there's loads of them. I really need to start making a bit of an effort. I was having a bit of a laugh, or a bit of a chuckle. Somebody commented on one of my Arcade Perfect My Arses, and the guy commented that I didn't feature, it was a Fire Shark? He commented that the version of Fire Shark on the Commodore 64 was crap, and that there was actually another one, a second one, which I should have looked at. And he was kind of having a laugh. He was saying, "Oh, you need to do your homework and, you know, do a bit of research." But what I said to him was, unless you've actually tried to, unless you make video content yourself, the amount of time that YouTubers put into making videos is just ridiculous. Sometimes I can spend a whole night, I might get a whole night to myself, and I spend a whole night just making a video. So what I just said to him was, look, you know, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to, I do try and do a bit of research as best I possibly can, but I simply don't have the time to start looking at tons of websites to make sure I've covered every single version of a game. It's just not going to happen. I don't get paid a penny for doing this. I've got a full-time job, a family, I've got other things I need to do in my life without that. So as much as I'd love to put together a more concise collection of games when I do these things. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. But so anyway, thanks Kev for that. It is much appreciated. Second question, not second question, second bunch of questions is the Mr. Retrohawk as usual. Thank you very much, Squire. Good waffle again, Alan. I can't see me playing No Man's Sky either. Just takes up too much time. Same reason I didn't get Fallout 4. Funny you should mention Fallout 4. That's exactly the reason I didn't buy Fallout 4, because people were going on about, oh, it's got 150 hours into it and I've only done 10% of the game. And I'm like, nah. What I did do is I had bought Fallout 3 a while back. I played that for a wee while. But yeah, Fallout 4 was another game like No Man's Sky I deliberately didn't buy because I know I wouldn't play it. So a couple of questions for this week's show. I love that, the show. Do you think backwards compatibility is important or desirable with current gen? Would it not be awesome if PS4 could play all PlayStation games from the first console? I've spoke about this in the past. Yes, it would be lovely if new consoles would have backwards compatibility, but from what I understand, unless the PS3 would run the PS2 games, but it used emulation, so it didn't play them that well. If you want a new machine to be able to play older games, you would have to have the chips in it to make it compatible, which would push the price up. Now, personally, I've got a PlayStation 1 there, I've got a PlayStation 2 there, I've got a PlayStation 3 there, I've got a PlayStation 4 there. I don't need. It would be handy if my PlayStation 4 played all these games, but it doesn't. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I don't think the people that buy, I would say the majority of people that buy the PS4 really have no interest in playing older games. Just what we're talking about earlier on with arcades. I really don't think it's a viable thing for companies to do. It would be nice to have, but I don't think it's going to happen. Older consoles now are pennies to buy. Games are dirt cheap. So if you really want to play, older games, just get yourself the new hardware. Get yourself the old hardware, I should say. So it would be nice to have, but I don't think it's ever going to happen, unfortunately. Do you think that PC gaming will become more popular than console gaming in the future like it was in the past? Most people played on their home computer. As much as I love playing on consoles, PCs are definitely starting to show many advantages. I have been a PC gamer. I used to spend shitloads of money on playing PC games, and it just used to constantly depress me how quickly my hardware became outdated and wouldn't run. The thing about PCs, and yeah, I've got not a bad PC now. I mean, it cost me £500-600. That was about a year ago. It's far from being cutting edge. I mean, nowadays guys will pay probably £500 for a graphics card. If you want to run the Oculus Rift or the Vive, whatever it is, you need two cards. So you're probably talking £2,000 for a decent PC. But yeah, PCs are head and shoulders above current consoles. I mean, apparently the technology that the PS4 has is probably about 5-6 years old in PC terms. If you want to play games looking astonishing, then by all means get a PC. But I like to be able to sit in my big comfy chair like this and play games. I don't get the same enjoyment sitting in front of a monitor playing a game. I think it's each to their own. There's some people who swear by PCs. They would never ever. They look upon they look upon PCs. They look upon game consoles. Excuse me, that's my dinner coming back to haunt me. Yeah, they look upon computers. They look upon gaming consoles as toys for kids, which I think is utter nonsense. But you compare a game in a PS4, no matter how good it looks, look at it on a PC and it's gorgeous. I mean, I've been playing Left 4 Dead with my daughter. In fact, I'm going to be playing that tonight, so I need to get this video finished. I've been playing it in the Xbox 360 and I've also got it in Steam, and I've got to say it looks astonishing on the PC. I mean, it's probably 5 years old now on the PC, but it looks incredible. It blows the Xbox 360 version out of the water. It really does. So if you want the games to look astonishing and you don't mind sitting in and sitting beside a monitor, then PC gaming is the way to go. But you need to have quite a big, quite deep pockets and be willing to spend a lot to keep the thing up to date. I like chilling back on the settee or a nice comfy chair with a gamepad and know that I don't have to piss about with settings. I know the game's going to run really well, and I can just relax. I still think that even the Xbox 360 looks amazing. So unless you're used to playing games at 120 frames a second, I mean, I think PC games now, they're running at like over 2000 resolution, which is just mental. I think most games on computers on consoles are like 1080p whatever, and the PCs are running at double the resolution, so they do look incredible. If you want to have your games looking like that and you got used to it, then I think you'd probably be disappointed when you go back to a console again. But I'm quite happy to play it. To go back to your question, do you think PC game will become more popular in consoles? I don't think it will, personally. I really don't think it will. You're always going to have your hardcore PC guys who will never look at a console. But Mr. Average, who goes up to game on a Saturday afternoon, they're going to buy a game for their little boy or for themselves. They wouldn't look past a console. I think there's way more, I don't know what the percentages are, but I would imagine there's way more copies of a console game get sold than a PC version of the game. So I don't think PCs are ever going to make a comeback the same way as they were, maybe 10-15 years ago. So, but anyway, listen, that is it. I don't have a shout out to do this week because I've not been watching much YouTube at all, unfortunately. But I will try and get one put out next week. As usual, I notice I have now gone, as of tonight, I was at 860 subscribers, so I'm only, 40 off 900, so 140 away from the magical 1000, so hopefully we can get to 1000 subs before Christmas. That would be quite special. Thank you again to everybody that takes time to watch my videos, takes time to comment, and give me the thumbs up. That's always appreciated. Welcome any new subscribers. I hope you enjoy watching it, and I hope you see enough here that makes you want to keep watching the videos. Lastly, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe. And lastly guys, thanks very much for watching.